The moon hung low over Springfield, casting a pale glow through the curtains of 742 Evergreen Terrace. Bart Simpson, ever the mischief maker, was restless. Detention had been particularly dull that day, and he craved something to spice up his evening. Sneaking past the living room where Homer was snoring through a rerun of Itchy and Scratchy, Bart crept up the creaky stairs to the attic. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of mildew clung to the old boxes stacked haphazardly around the room. His flashlight beam danced across forgotten relics, Marge's old painting supplies, a broken Krusty the Clown doll, and a pile of Homer's half-eaten donut boxes, tucked in a shadowy corner. Something glinted. Bart pushed aside a moth-eaten curtain and found it, a strange, rusted glove with 4 razor-sharp blades protruding from the fingers. It looked like something out of a horror movie, equal parts creepy and cool. "Jackpot," Bart muttered, slipping it onto his hand. The metal was cold, heavier than it looked, and the blades gleamed faintly despite the rust. Posing like a supervillain, he slashed at the air, chuckling to himself. "This'll freak Lisa out big time." Back in his room, Bart couldn't resist. Playing with his new toy, standing in front of his mirror, he struck dramatic poses, mimicking the villains from his favorite comics. "Fear me, Springfield, I'm the king of nightmares," he declared, then, on a whim, added, "I wish I could have the most terrifying nightmares ever." The words hung in the air, and for a split second the glove seemed to pulse with a faint, unnatural warmth. Bart shrugged it off, tossed the glove under his bed, and flopped onto his mattress, drifting into sleep. Downstairs, Homer was already deep in a dream. He stood in a paradise of his own making, a sprawling factory filled with conveyor belts churning out endless donuts. Glazed, sprinkled, jelly-filled, they floated around him like sugary clouds. Donuts," he mumbled, grabbing one in each hand. But as he bit into a chocolate-frosted delight, it squirmed. Tiny, jagged teeth sprouted from its edges, snapping at his fingers. Homer yelped, dropping the donut, only to see the others transform. Their holes became gaping maws, their sprinkles sharp as needles. The donuts swarmed, leaping onto him, their teeth sinking into his flesh. He screamed, flailing as the factory floor turned sticky with blood and frosting, pulling him down into a suffocating pile of living pastries. Homer jolted awake, drenched in sweat, his heart pounding. "Stupid dream," he muttered, rubbing his arms. But as he stumbled to the bathroom, he froze. Faint red scratches crisscrossed his skin like claw marks. He blinked, shaking his head. "Must have scratched myself," he grumbled, ignoring the chill creeping up his spine. He shuffled back to bed, pulling the covers tight, unaware that something far darker had taken root in Springfield. Morning came, and the Simpson household buzzed with its usual chaos. Marge was in the kitchen, humming as she flipped pancakes, while Lisa sipped orange juice and read a book on ancient curses. Bart sauntered in, the glove tucked into his backpack for later pranks. "You look like death warmed over, Dad," he teased, noticing Homer's pale face and bloodshot eyes. "Shut it, boy," Homer snapped, nursing a coffee. "Had a weird dream, that's all." He didn't mention the scratches, but Marge noticed, him wincing as he scratched at his arm. "Honestly, Homer, you need to lay off the late-night snacks," Marge said, setting a plate in front of him. She chalk-ketamine worried, though. Homer wasn't himself. His usual goofy energy was muted, replaced by a jittery unease. Lisa, ever observant, caught Bart smirking as he fiddled with something in his backpack. "What's that?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. "Nothing you'd care about, Brainiac," Bart shot back, zipping the bag shut. But Lisa's curiosity was piqued. She'd seen that look on Bart's face before. Trouble was brewing. At school, Bart couldn't resist showing off. During recess, he slipped on the glove and chased Milhouse around the playground, cackling as his friends squealed. "I'm gonna slice you into pizza, man," Bart taunted, waving the blades. Milhouse tripped, scrambling away, but Bart was too caught up in the fun to notice the glove's weight seemed different, like it was clinging to his hand. That night, Bart's bravado faded. In his dream, he was skateboarding through Springfield, the wind whipping past as he pulled off tricks. The streets were eerily quiet, the houses dark. His skateboard hit a crack and he stumbled, looking down to see the board twist. Its wheels sprouted jagged blades and the wood warped into a snarling, toothy maw. "Whoa, not cool!" Bart yelped, sprinting as the skateboard chased him, its wheels screeching like a living thing. The pavement cracked open, swallowing him into darkness where the blades slashed at his legs. He screamed, thrashing as the creature lunged. Bart woke, gasping. His sheets tangled around him, his legs stung, and when he checked, faint welts marked his shins. "What the?" he whispered, heart racing. He kicked the glove out from under his bed, staring at it. For the first time, he wondered if it was more than a toy. Meanwhile, Lisa couldn't sleep. She'd snuck into the attic after dinner, poking through the boxes where Bart had been. She found nothing but dust and junk, but her mind kept circling. Back to Bart's strange behavior. Grabbing her laptop, she started researching cursed objects, her brow furrowing as she stumbled across legends of a dream-walking demon tied to a bladed glove. "This is crazy," she muttered, but a knot of dread tightened in her chest. As the clock ticked past midnight, the glove lay in Bart's room, its blades catching the moonlight. Somewhere in the dreamscape, a low, rasping chuckle echoed, a gay sound that didn't belong in Springfield. The nightmare had only just begun. The morning sun did little to warm the chill that had settled over 742 Evergreen Terrace. Bart sat at the breakfast table, picking at his cereal, the bladed glove hidden in his backpack. His legs still stung from the welts left by his nightmare, but he brushed it off as a fluke. "Probably just slept funny," he muttered, avoiding Lisa's piercing gaze. Marge bustled around the kitchen, her usual cheer strained as she glanced at Homer, who slumped over his coffee, his face gaunt and eyes shadowed. "You're scaring me, Homer," Marge said, setting a plate of bacon in front of him. "You didn't touch your pancakes yesterday, and now you look like you haven't slept in days." Her voice wavered, betraying the worry she tried to hide. Homer grunted, scratching at the fading scratches on his arm. "Just a rough night, Marge. Dreamed about burns and some freaky fire. No big deal." But the tremor in his voice told a different story. The dream had been vivid. Mr. Burns, his eyes glowing like embers, chasing him through a molten Usina nuclear where the walls dripped with flame. He'd woken with new cuts on his chest, deeper than before. But he kept that to himself. Lisa, nibbling on toast, watched Bart closely. She hadn't forgotten his antics with the glove yesterday, and her late-night research had left her uneasy. "Bart, what's in your backpack?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Mind your own business, nerd," Bart snapped, shoving his bowl away. But his bravado was thin. The glove felt like a lead weight in his bag, and he couldn't shake the image of his skateboard turning on him. After breakfast, Marge retreated to the living room, hoping to calm her nerves with some cleaning. As she vacuumed, she slipped into a daydream, a soothing fantasy of a spotless house. But the dream twisted. The dust bunnies under the couch writhed, merging into a black, pulsating mass. It slithered toward her, sticky tendrils wrapping around her legs. She screamed, clawing at the floor as the filth surged, filling her mouth and nose with choking sludge. Marge woke, gasping on the couch, the vacuum still humming. Her skin crawled, and when she checked her arms, dark smudges clung to her like ink resisting soap and water. "What's happening to me?" she whispered, tears welling. At school, Bart's unease grew. He'd planned to ditch the glove in a dumpster behind the Quickie Mart, but when he opened his backpack during lunch, it was still there, nestled among his comic books. "No way," he muttered, slamming the bag shut. Milhouse, still spooked from yesterday's chase, kept his distance, leaving Bart to brood alone. The playground felt wrong. Shadows seemed to flicker at the edges of his vision, and the air carried a faint, metallic tang. Lisa, meanwhile, skipped study hall to hit the Springfield library. She pored over dusty tomes on folklore, her fingers trembling as she found a reference to a dream demon tied to a cursed glove. The description matched Bart's toy perfectly. 4 blades, rusted metal, and a history of dragging victims into nightmares. Freddy Krueger, she read, her stomach twisting. The book warned that the demon fed on fear, growing stronger with each victim. Lisa scribbled notes, determined to confront Bart tonight. That evening, the Simpsons gathered for dinner, but the mood was grim. Homer barely spoke, his fork scraping aimlessly at his plate. Marge's hands shook as she served meatloaf, her skin still faintly stained. Bart kept his eyes down, the glove's presence burning in his mind. Only Maggie seemed unaffected, sucking on her pacifier, though Lisa noticed it glowed faintly red when the lights dimmed. After dinner, Bart snuck to the backyard, determined to destroy the glove. He tossed it into a metal trash can and doused it with lighter fluid, but as he struck a match, the glove vanished, reappearing on the ground beside him. "This ain't funny," he yelled, kicking it away. By the time he got to his room, it was back under his bed, its blades glinting mockingly. Homer's night was worse. In his dream, the Usina nuclear was a labyrinth of fire and shadow. Mr. Burns loomed, his body elongated and insect-like, his fingers tipped with claws. "You're mine, Simpson," he hissed, lunging. Homer ran, but the floor melted, trapping. His feet, claws raked his back, and he woke screaming, blood seeping through his pajamas. Marge rushed in, horrified by the gashes. "We're going to the doctor tomorrow," she insisted, but Homer just stared at the ceiling, too shaken to argue. Lisa cornered Bart in his room, holding the library book. "Where'd you get that glove, Bart? It's dangerous," she said, shoving a page in his face. The illustration showed a figure in a striped sweater, wielding the same bladed weapon. Bart paled, confessing how he'd found it and made the wish. "I didn't know, okay? I thought it was cool," he said, voice cracking. "We have to destroy it," Lisa urged, but Bart shook his head, too scared to touch it again. As they argued, Maggie's pacifier fell from her mouth, rolling across the floor. It pulsed with a crimson light, and her eyes flickered black for a moment. Lisa gasped, but Bart didn't notice, too focused on the glove. Across town, Mr. Burns was restless in his mansion. His dream began innocently, a vault filled with cash, but the bills sprouted scales, coiling into snakes that burned as they slithered. They wrapped around him, their fiery bites searing his flesh. He woke in a cold sweat, claw marks crisscrossing his withered arms. "Smithers!" he bellowed, but no one answered. The next morning, Marge found Homer in bed, his body cold and grotesquely swollen, as if stuffed with dough. His skin was pockmarked with bite marks, some oozing a sickly glaze. She screamed, dropping the tray of coffee she'd brought. The house filled with the sound of her sobs as Bart and Lisa ran in, staring in horror at their father's corpse. In the shadows of Bart's room, the glove pulsed faintly, its laughter a low rasp only the dreamscape could hear. Springfield was unraveling, and Freddy Krueger was just getting started. The Simpson household was a tomb of grief. Homer's death hung over 742 Evergreen Terrace like a suffocating fog. Marge stood in the kitchen, her hands trembling as she tried to make breakfast, but the eggs burned and the coffee boiled over. Her skin still bore the faint, inky smudges from her nightmare, and her eyes were red from crying. Bart and Lisa sat at the table in silence, the weight of their father's grotesque corpse, found swollen and bitten as if mauled by living donuts, crushing any attempt at normalcy. Maggie, strapped in her high chair, sucked on her pacifier, its eerie red glow unnoticed in the morning light. Marge's resolve to hold the family together crumbled that night. Exhausted, she fell asleep on the couch, slipping into a dream of cleaning the house. The vacuum hummed, but the dirt fought back, coalescing into a writhing black mass. It surged over her, tendrils burrowing into her skin, dragging her into a suffocating void. She clawed at the air, gasping, but the sludge filled her lungs. Marge woke briefly, choking, her body convulsing. By morning, Bart found her body, melted into a grotesque pile of animated laundry, her blue hair tangled in the mess. He screamed, backing away as Lisa rushed in, her face paling at the sight. "We're next," Lisa whispered, her voice hollow. She clutched the library book, its pages now dog-eared from frantic reading. "Freddy's killing us in our dreams, Bart. We have to stop him." Bart, still reeling from Marge's death, nodded, his usual bravado gone. The glove sat on his desk, its blades gleaming with malevolent intent. He hadn't touched it since yesterday, but it refused to be discarded, reappearing no matter where he threw it. Lisa's research had yielded a desperate plan: confront Freddy in the dreamscape. The book says he's strongest in dreams, but if we face him together, we might stand a chance, she said, though her voice trembled. Bart wasn't convinced, but guilt gnawed at him. He'd brought this curse into their lives. "Fine," he muttered, "but how do we even get to him?" That night, Lisa tried to enter the dreamscape deliberately, meditating with a candle as the book instructed. She dreamed of a stage, her sax in hand, the notes soaring, but the music turned discordant, the notes materializing as shimmering blades that sliced the air. They slashed her arms, her legs, her chest, each cut burning with unnatural pain. She fought to stay lucid, calling for Bart, but the blades overwhelmed her. Lisa woke screaming, only to collapse, her body crisscrossed with deep gashes. She died in her bed, blood pooling on the sheets, her sax lying beside her like a useless talisman. Bart's turn came hours later. He hadn't meant to sleep, but exhaustion won. In his dream, Springfield streets were a twisted maze, and his skateboard was alive, its wheels sprouting blades that screeched as it hunted him. He ran, heart pounding, but the board caught him, its teeth sinking into his neck. The last thing he saw was the pavement rushing up as his head rolled free. Morning found him decapitated, his body slumped in his room, the glove resting on his chest like a trophy. Maggie, the last Simpson, didn't stand a chance. Her pacifier, now pulsing with crimson light, turned her dream into a nightmare. She floated above her crib, eyes black as coal, her tiny body racked with spasms. The pacifier exploded in a burst of red, and she collapsed, lifeless, her small form marked with burns that glowed faintly. Springfield itself began to unravel. At Springfield Elementary, Principal Skinner dreamed of endless detention halls, the walls closing in, their bricks grinding like teeth. He was found crushed, his body impossibly flattened. Professor Frink, tinkering in his lab, dreamed of a sentient invention, a robotic arm that turned on him, its circuits glowing red. His body was mangled, wires wrapped around his throat. Moe's tavern became a death trap, the beer taps spewing a blood-like sludge that drowned patrons in their sleep. Sideshow Bob, ever the schemer, sensed the chaos and saw a chance to outwit the demon. In his dream, he faced Freddy in a warped version of Springfield, armed with his cunning. But Freddy twisted Bob's memories, forcing him to relive every failed attempt to kill Bart. Knives rained down, each one a reminder of his defeats, until Bob was shredded, his body found in his cell, a smile frozen on his face. The town became a living nightmare. Streets curled into impossible spirals, houses sprouted gaping, screaming faces, and the sky bled red. The school's desks became traps, locking students in eternal dreams. The Quickie Mart's shelves writhed with living products, strangling Apu in his sleep. Even the church wasn't safe. Reverend Lovejoy's prayers turned to ash as his pews bound him, his body charred by unseen flames. In the end, no one was spared. Freddy's power grew with each death, his laughter echoing through the dreamscape as Springfield became his playground. The Simpsons' house stood silent, its windows dark, the family's bodies twisted and broken. Bart's skate, Lisa's, Zach's, Marge's vacuum, Homer's donut crumbs, and Maggie's pacifier lay scattered, relics of a lost world. On the living room floor, the glove pulsed, its blades catching the faint light of a dying town. Springfield was gone, its reality warped into a grotesque tableau of flesh and fear, a testament to Freddy's dominion. Somewhere, in another world, the glove waited, its low chuckle promising new nightmares.